So I'm Rosie Enys, and I'm here to share our experiences of creating and delivering a session called Research for Creative Practice. I worked with my colleagues Victoria Rees and Catherine Worrall on the design and the delivery of this session, and although they're not here with me today, we will hear their voices at certain points, tech willing. The session we designed was an attempt to integrate the library with the creative process, to demonstrate the collaborative opportunities between artists and libraries, research and librarians. The session we designed was an attempt, I'll share our motivations for creating this session, as well as what we mean by research for creative practice. I'll also give a flavour of the session, as well as responses from the students. And finally wrap up with some reflections on the process and the experience, as well as our thoughts for the future. To give you some context, we work for Falmouth Exeter Plus, which is a service delivery partner of the University of Exeter and Falmouth University, providing higher education facilities in Cornwall. But this project is particularly centred around our provision for the Arts University, Falmouth University, and how we can enhance the students' experience of the library and of research for their practice. In our roles as Academic Liaison Librarians, we often observe a disconnect in our students between research for written assignments and research for the practical aspects of their course. Our students are passionate and immersed in their own creative practice and the spaces that this practice occurs, and can feel far less comfortable exploring the physical and digital library spaces. And so, exploring this disconnect became our motivations for creating the session. To our students, the library seems synonymous with written assignments. And because of this, our students tend to be disengaged with the idea and the experience of research. And although many students do actively research their practice, they don't necessarily recognise that that's what they're doing, or they don't know what forms research for creative practice can take, or how their skills could develop. Ultimately, many students are not realising the real value of research to creative practice. So with these motivations, we set about developing a session as part of a series of bite-sized sessions that we offer. The bite-sized programme includes a variety of library sessions and is offered to students at both universities to accommodate differences in information needs and access to resources, and all are delivered online. And an online session seemed to be the best choice for this session, as we wanted to offer these sessions to the widest community of creative practitioners at Falmouth, both online and on-campus students. Mural was a tool introduced to the organisation during the pandemic to enhance the online teaching experience and to allow students and academics to interact and collaborate in a visually engaging digital whiteboard space. And this session, as it was focused on creative practice, we felt the aesthetics were an important consideration. And Mural enabled us to create an effective visual design and interactive experience, where we also could show off some of the images from one of our library's image databases. We were keen to inspire a sense of the library as an inclusive space by encouraging students to see that research can encompass a wide range of activities that occur in many different spaces, the library being one of those, along with the studio, and any other spaces we occupy during the creative process, so essentially anywhere. We wanted our students to see the library as a space for enhancing creative practice, and we hoped the session would dissolve any preconceived barriers to research. The interactive session was designed to encourage students to realise how their creative and improvisational skills can be transferred to support and complement the experience of research. We wanted to encourage students to share their ideas, to collaborate with us on understanding and enhancing the creative practice research experience, rather than it appearing as if we were teaching them how to do it. So being really conscious of that relationship between us and our students and acknowledging the skills and experiences that we each bring. But before I talk further, I just wanted to clarify what we meant by research for creative practice. What we're referring to is information literacy and the wider and interconnected digital literacy. In other words, research or exploration of information to support, inform and inspire creative practice. Not research with a capital R, sometimes referred to as practice-led research or practice-based research or just practice research, where practice is the key method of inquiry. The process of creating the session provoked us to engage with different understandings of what the information literacy definition was in relation to research. We discussed whether research for creative practice was primarily to support the creation of the final piece of work. However, the process of creativity isn't a linear one, and information discovered along the way, consciously and subconsciously, influence both the process and the outcome. And the meandering and uncertainty of the journey should be recognised as a valuable aspect of creative practice. Unlike research skills sessions for written assignments, which are linked to summative assessment deadlines, studio practice continues throughout the year, giving us greater freedom about when our session could be delivered. Initially, we piloted the first session after the busy teaching period, so towards the end of study block 2 in 2022. And as the take-up was very encouraging for the pilot, we had 18 students, we rolled out an extra session and then offered more, as indicated here. Our plan is to offer sessions earlier in the coming autumn term, as we're keen to encourage students to think about the library and research as inextricably linked to creative practice, to enthuse our students about research and information and the physical and digital collections early on, so the library is not just seen as a resource for their written assignments, but for all aspects of their degree and beyond. We aim to develop an understanding of the relationship between research and practice and demonstrate how the two are entwined. We reframed information literacy skills for this context, including keyword development and search strategies, aiming to show what research can bring to practice. And by doing this, we hope to build confidence and enthusiasm for research. We aim to show students how research underpins other practitioners' work by hearing their tutors' views on how they embed research into their practice, bringing this to life through these real experiences. And we also aim to encourage students to record their research journey by showing them how the method of journaling could be applied. So, I would like to give you a flavour of this session now, hopefully. So, this is how the session looked on the Mural board. We started with an icebreaker, and then we moved to the aims of the session, where we highlighted the words appreciation of the relationship between research and practice, and understand that value of research to practice, and emphasise that opportunity for sharing ideas and strategies. Now we hear from Victoria.
We decided to go to the root of inspiration, to the spark, to where the creative process starts, but is often overlooked, not recognised, and therefore not acknowledged. So it was important to us to highlight this element at this early stage. We wanted to reinforce the message that research is everywhere, and by stopping, taking a moment and acknowledging this, inspiration can begin to be pinpointed to the original source. And from the embodied or emotional response to the spark, to introduce the process of translating this moment into keywords to allow the researcher to articulate, to document and essentially research their topic.
And then we go into an activity, and this is where Mural works well. The idea of this is to encourage the students to think of ways that they can make the link between their research, their practice and research. And I present a series of lenses and ways of seeing their practice. And these are others' practice, so examples of other people's practice, documentation of practice, which might take the form of critiques or reflections, history, so that evolution of the practice, context, the wider influences, and finally, techniques or tools that are specific to that practice. These could be recognised as ways of seeing common to any creative practice. I then ask the students to drag and drop icons that represent different resources to the different lenses, according to what type of resource they think might provide that information. So, for example, what resource might provide information on understanding a particular technique applied to their practice. There is, of course, no right answer, but the act of moving the icons prompts a reasoning process in the students, which I then explore with them. I then share a comparison of a Google search with one in our library search, comparing and contrasting the type of resource you might find in each place. Not saying that one is better than the other, but showing what each might provide, and then tying this in with how you might search in these places, so what keywords you might use. Highlighting the value of thinking more broadly as well as more specifically about your topic. And finally, summing up this section by revisiting the elements that might help students navigate their research for their practice. So those lenses, the different resources, and then where you might search as well as how. And then we hear from Catherine.
I thought it would be useful for students to hear their tutors' views on the impact of research on their own practice and felt this would help validate what we were trying to convey. This was also a liaison opportunity to involve academics in a library-driven project. Through initial conversations with art and drawing academics, it became clear that they were already promoting library research as vital for student practice in their teaching, so our initiative was timely. We also interviewed a lecturer from film and television to capture a different type of practice. The interviews were recorded on Teams and illustrated different perspectives, but all advocated the importance of research to underpin the creative process, from the initial inspiration to understanding who you are as an artist. We didn't have time to play the videos, so I decided to pick out key quotes highlighting the main points I wanted to convey. We then zoomed into each one while I read them out. We decided that it would be important to include a case study of the creative process, as it would be relatable for students and would show them how they could weave their thoughts, ideas, research and practice into a journal. I asked the lecturer if I could have a look at an example of a student journal and took my inspiration from this. The student had described their process from initial ideas through to a finished piece of work. For each part of the process, we zoomed into an image that illustrated the point while I talked through it. I showed how a student could start off by doing printmaking experiments and add samples or drawings into their journal and talk about why they did it and why it was interesting. The student could then be inspired by an exhibition and reflect on the similarities with their own work and would write about this in their journal. They would then visit the library to research the artist and find reviews of the exhibition or information about any other artists working in a comparable way. Any interesting information and reflections would be added to the journal, including source references. The student might then go back to the studio and experiment some more, inspired by what they had seen. I hope that by showing students this example, it would not only show them how to keep track of their practice, reflection and research, but would also improve their ability to articulate their work to peers, tutors and professionals.
My second activity contrasts with the first one I did, where I looked at intentional searching, so those lenses. This is about serendipity as a significant approach to research, one led by curiosity and awareness. I give examples of everyday serendipity and then ask how we might experience serendipity online when we're curiously exploring our practice. The students contribute examples of what they've experienced or what they might do to provide opportunities for serendipity. And lots of ideas came from this about ways of following trails, seeing connections, related information, associated ideas and subject tags, and also browsing online, for example, via virtual bookshelves, collections, and artist pages, etc. I finish by highlighting human opportunities for serendipity through conversation and the value of getting yourself to talk to others about your practice for the purpose of generating ideas, seeing different perspectives, discovering new paths, and not least, finding keywords that will help define your practice and support you with your intentional searching, as well as serendipitous discovery. We then sum up the session and share a link to the feedback form, which we kept quite simple, just enough to enable us to discover what the students found helpful and what they would like to see instead. We received feedback informal and via these forms during the session, and the feedback form was also sent out with our post-sessional information, which included a PDF of their session's mural board. One of our questions in the form was what aspect of the session was most useful to you, and we love these responses. As you can see, one online student from California was very positive about the session, obviously a committed student as it was 4 a.m. for her when we ran the session. Another example here shows how a mature online student coming back to education after a decade found it helped to clarify what research for creative practice is and told us the session was delivered in a clear and concise way, and then even went on to say that librarians are the best, which, of course, we know. We also wanted to find out if there are any additional elements attendees would have liked from the session, and here are some of the responses. Some students would have liked more space in the session to jot down thoughts and reflections. Some would have liked us to represent other types of creative practice, so for example, games, animation, or dance. And there was also a request for a longer session to include areas such as primary research and visual research. And we were also asked to feature more case studies representing different practice. The session had been evolving each time we delivered it, and we have responded to student feedback as well as our own observations and reflections. And we've considered the accessibility of Mural, although we didn't have any feedback on this, and how we might provide options for the activities to be accessed differently, being mindful of the neurodivergence within our student population. And this whole process of designing and delivering this session has encouraged us to reflect on the research process, particularly around the wider term of practice research and what the information and digital literacy aspects of research for creative practice look and feel like in relation to this. Reflections on developments in our information landscape have encouraged us to think about engagement with information for creative practice in an era of generative artificial intelligence, and what this might mean and how we integrate this into our sessions in the future. We can also see that our motivations for creating the session were well-founded, that our students appreciated and valued our session, and their feedback has prompted these thoughts for the future. There's lots of scope for developing further material, firstly in the form of asynchronous content, such as alternative ways of accessing the activities and developing some of the ideas within the session. And we've also got the academics talking head videos, and we would like to record more of these to represent a wider range of creative disciplines to help students from different subject areas really connect with the concept. Recording more of these would also provide the opportunity to talk to academics about this session and potentially deliver it to them, get their feedback and encourage them to direct their students to attend them. And we'd like somewhere for this material to sit as an open educational resource, and this might be on our current student study hub site that we share with our academic skills colleagues, for example. And beyond the development of the asynchronous material, we'd like to look at developing another session based on what our students have told us that they'd like. There is also lots of additional material we gathered during this process that we'd like to draw on, especially around uncertainty and improvisation. We'd like to look at alternative modes of delivery, so in-person or hybrid, to give greater accessibility and to see what options are most popular. Moreover, in future sessions, we intend to refer to these information literacy skills as attributes, as we do in many of our other sessions, to help students recognise how these skills translate into employment in the creative industries. And finally, our enhanced understanding of the information needs and research experience in practice has led us to ask questions about how we understand practice research. What the process is that drives, feeds, and creates these outputs. How different is this process compared with more traditional academic subject areas or more traditional research outputs? Which has led us to think about how we might create a research for practice session relevant for our University of Exeter STEM students. Again, with the driving aim of encouraging engagement with libraries and information which traverses theoretical and practice-based experiences and ultimately demonstrates the creative powers of the library. Thank you.